Hey, what's going on, everyone? Tuesday, July 14th. It's at 7:17 right now. Uh, like always, almost always, woke up at 4:30 in the morning, something like that. I got up and then I uh, ran and walked. I tried. I I pushed myself. I went further away from the house as I was running. So I think I ran about 2.5 miles today, which sounds weak if you're talking about actually like pushing yourself. But I didn't turn. I didn't turn any of the blocks. So that means I kept running away from the house. And then even when I stopped to walk, I was walking away from the house. So I walked and ran like 4 miles today. On the weekend, we do a whole lot more. It was really hot. I did a couple of, it wasn't like live streams, but I did, let's call them street cams. I did a couple of street cams while we were walking. Did I do one? Actually, I don't remember if I did one on Sunday. Um, yeah, I was just testing out that feature on Facebook as well. So anyway, so I woke up today. I did my exercise. Just took a shower and I was playing around with OBS, which is the system that allows me to do the recording. With that system, you can like share screens or you can set up some scenes. So that's what I was doing. I'm gonna do like a whole bunch of picture in picture. So I was setting up some other scenes so you can kind of see. Oh, you can kind of see my scenes. What's frustrating, at least I can't figure it out right now, is this scene is whatever, like widescreen. You can see like the edge, whereas I don't know where the edges are. And I was trying to set up the same thing, like right here. Well, I guess it is widescreen, but for some reason I get these black boxes, which is really annoying. So I guess I don't care that much. While I was listening and walking, I was listening to Gary Vee, still listening to those books, re-listen to the Thank You Economy, which gets me motivated. I started listening to Ask Gary Vee. I think that's how all of this started anyway. I think Ask Gary Vee was on sale on Audible, so I think I got it like buy one credit get two, or buy two books for one credit or something like that. Previously, I had listened to Crushing It, which is his like newest book, related to his original book Crush It, and I think at the time I don't know, it didn't hit me. Maybe because it sounded, I think it was more about like entrepreneur success stories from his listeners. I don't remember exactly because I stopped listening. It didn't catch me at the time. Now I'm on a Gary Vee kick, so I'm listening to and reading all of his books. Doing Ask Gary Vee right now, which is more like, it's based on his YouTube channel. It's just a whole bunch of Q&A. So it's good information, but it's the same kind of thing where there's no strong narrative. There's just a whole bunch of tactics, which is nice, but it's hard for me to talk about because he covered just a whole bunch of random stuff, like his philosophy or whatever. So it just depends on the situation. Still interesting. Maybe it's not for everybody, but I like it. I like his attitude. I like his attitude. I like his knowledge, even though I haven't put it into practice yet, so I can't say if it's accurate or not, but I'm going to assume that he knows more than me, because why wouldn't I? He's further ahead than me. What else? Working on still doing my 1,000 days of code. I do code every day, including this weekend. I programmed a lot. There was a lot of stuff going on this weekend and a lot of stuff going on at work, so I didn't do the Twitter post, so I'm going to have to do catch up on all of the Twitter. I think the last one that I did was day 9 or 10, which I think was Friday. So that means I haven't programmed yet today. Anyway, I'm a couple of days ahead, day 14 or 15, something like that. So what's what else has been happening? Here's what I've been thinking a lot. Maybe this is, well, I don't know if it's going to be boring to anybody. I'm not worried about that, I guess. I'm not worried about that, I guess, because you're watching this channel, and if you've watched one or two of these already, maybe you're already super bored. You're okay with that. That's what you signed up for. All of the jobs that I've ever had, and we used to teach this in school, and maybe I was doing it wrong as well. But we would learn about the agile software, like methodologies. And we would teach it in school. I didn't teach it exactly. We would teach like Scrum. There's this weird thing where it seems, and if somebody knows better than me, which a lot of people do know better than me, please help me out here. So obviously Scrum is different than Agile. Like I have no problems with that. It seems like these things get conflated a lot. People always ask, or like there's just a ton of, like on job applications or when you go into interviews, like have you ever worked in an Agile environment? And what they really mean is, have you ever worked with the Scrum process? So do you do stand-ups? Do you do story points? All of this stuff. That is all Scrum. I don't even know if that's 100% what Scrum is. I mean, it's related. Like doing sprints, like frequent check-ins. That's all Scrum. Planning out. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. So everyone conflates these, and that's the problem. I'm reading Jeff Sutherland's Scrum. Like Jeff Sutherland is the guy who created Scrum. He co-wrote Scrum with, I think, his son. And I'm going through that, and I'm reading that because I've done it. I've done it for 10 years, 15 years, doing Scrum and doing Agile. But I've also read, I think it's Robert Martin. Can I pull up? I'm going to pull up some books. Let me switch to my screen scene, which is why I was playing around with it. Let me go to Amazon. Scrum. Okay, Scrum, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time by Jeff Sutherland. He's the guy who like created Scrum. So I'm going through and I'm reading this, but there's also another book. Yeah. This is also one of the founders. Robert Martin is one of the founders of, or one of the original signers of the Agile Manifesto. So he wrote this book, Agile Software Development. I read this book, Principles, Patterns, Practices. This book is a coding book. It's about programming. Like there's a ton of programming in there. How to write Agile code. Now, what does that mean? It means writing code and understanding that things are going to change, right? And so that's fine. Like requirements are going to change. Design is going to change. Software evolves. And so that's how I think I do my best to write code exactly like that. So I really like this book. And like I said, I have read this one. I read a lot about design patterns. I wrote a book about design patterns. That doesn't mean that I'm an expert at it, but I have read through a bunch of, if not the entire books, like these huge sections. So like Code Complete 2, I've read that one all the way. Design patterns, I read a bunch of stuff on design patterns when I was researching my book. I didn't read this one. This is like the original. I didn't read this one cover to cover. I read this one almost all the way through, and I've checked back into it a whole bunch of times. I didn't read this one. I think this is new. Yeah, 2019. Yeah, I read Clean Code. That's a good book. So, like I said, I've worked with companies that want to be in an agile environment, but I think they really mean like Scrum environment. Here's the problem. How do I say it? Software does change. Like software does change. And let me talk about one of my old companies first. We worked, like, I don't even know how to talk about this because we don't talk about it that much. These are just my thoughts on it. The whole purpose is that software changes. And so it doesn't make sense to have a big plan. That's why waterfall doesn't work. Like waterfall, the coding methodology, I think that was just the default, where you plan everything and then you code everything and then you debug everything and then you release it. It doesn't work because things change, right? I'm not saying that you should never plan. You should have a plan, but you should also expect that your plan isn't going to go 100% correct. Unless it's something that you've already built before, you probably can't 100% plan every class that you're going to build. Or maybe you can, but it's just going to take just as much time to do it, right? Like you could use UML and actually build it out on paper, but you're actually probably wasting a whole bunch of time. Maybe people don't like that I would say that. You're probably wasting a whole bunch of time. Now, I forget somebody else who said it. It might have also been Robert Martin. In a lot of these books, or in one of these books, they kind of talk about the same thing, and they're talking about like the philosophy of code. And one person was saying the code is the design. So you could plan it out and design it on paper. Like if you were building a bridge, if you were building a building, first you would design it on paper, make sure that it works, and then build it. But the thing about software is the building phase is actually really easy, right? The building is just hitting, especially nowadays, you hit compile and that builds it, and then you can test it out. So the whole purpose of, again, I think it was Robert Martin, but I could be wrong, is the code is the design. So you are designing it as you're building it. And obviously, like, code is, well, I don't want to say obviously, it's different. Code is more complicated than a building. To be fair, I've never built a building. The assumption in this book, Code Complete 2, because they talk about code and architecture, the assumption is that this person says is that like buildings in general have been figured out. We want to make them more beautiful, like whatever that means, old style architecture or new modern style architecture. But in general, buildings have been figured out. Again, that's my lay person's understanding of it. If that's wrong, I would also believe that it's wrong. But the reason he says that, and the reason I'm saying that, is because in general, a building, like the structure of it is basically the same. And you can say that to a certain extent for programs, but the difference is all programs are different. So like there's no, even as I'm talking about it, it sounds like all buildings are different too. So I'm sure that's also the case. So I'm not going to die on that hill. But the fact is, all programs are also different. You might have some underlying structure, like the engine, like the game engine or whatever, but you're gonna have, so like there's certain principles or design patterns that you can use to solve similar problems, but you're gonna have, there's just parts where like this program is unique, and so there's not going to be like a one-stop solution for everything. Where was I going with that? Now I forget where I was going with that, but code. Where was I going with that? Code changes, requirements change. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. You can't. It's so hard to plan. It's so hard to actually plan it out until you start writing the code. So because all of these pieces of software are unique to a certain extent, that's the whole point, is you're trying to solve some new problem. If that problem was already solved, then, I mean, obviously there's like cookie cutter programs, but Like maybe you're trying to solve it in a better way, right? So you can't really plan it all out until you start programming. Maybe I'm absolutely wrong at this, but I've also been programming for a long time. So the point of Agile is just to account for that. And that's why if you go to the principles, or let's see, even just this first thing, individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. I don't deal with that one that much. Responding to change over following a plan. So, and they even say it right here. There's value with items on the right. We value the items on the left more. So it's not that processes and tools aren't important. It's not that following a plan isn't important, but you just have to recognize that if things are going to change, you have to respond to change. And so what I've experienced, again, we can talk about one of my old jobs. It was a very rigid system because it was like regulated. It was like in the gambling, they call it gaming. It was like in the gaming industry. So it was regulated by the government. And so, and you know, it was sports betting. So it flowed on this sports, like on like the sports seasons. And that's fine. That is where, you know, requirements like hit the real world. So I do understand that, but that's why you just, as much as you can, you got to plan better and not like actually plan out all of your things. Like plan better meaning give yourself tons of buffer time. If you want some new feature out that has to be out before basketball season, then build that feature and only that feature, and then try to get that out. I don't know. Like that's up to the. There's obviously a couple of different ways that you could go about doing that, but you have to recognize that the more features you try to get in, or if you're trying to put things in up until the last minute, then it's not going to work. And so, I remember we had a Scrum Master there who was quitting, and part of the reason she was quitting because it was the same thing. They wanted to be agile, but we were planning out sprints. We were planning out our 2-week sprints, and it was going to be the next like 6 sprints. So what is that? Like that's like 12 weeks or like 3 months. So the Scrum or like I forget who it was. Product owner asked the Scrum Master to plan out the next 3 months. Then you just can't do that. I don't know. You just can't do that in any real way. What's going to happen? I mean, who planned for like Corona? Who planned for like coronavirus? Nobody. You can't plan for that. You can't plan for people quitting. Like you can't plan for that. And so you can't plan for new regulations, which I didn't see. We didn't necessarily have any of that there. But there's just things that you can't plan for, and that's why you focus on like responding to that change. Now, maybe you have like a high level overview of, people call it a roadmap, high level overview of features you'd like to get in. But if you say, well, okay, in 2 weeks this feature will be in, and then 3 weeks this one will be in, and then in 2 more weeks we can get this. I've just never seen it actually work. And it's not just me. It's not just like I've never been able to make it work. I've worked with other programmers, and it takes as long as it takes. Like that's it. Especially as software gets more complicated, it takes as long as it takes. Bugs come up, unforeseen things. That's part of the reason why, if you look in Principles of Agile Software, continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. So that's where this is also like the difficult challenge I see for jobs. And this is why maybe, and now I forget who it was. Not Ron Jeffries. I was just looking him up. I don't know. Some other programmer I follow on Twitter, he was joking around about all software is crap. Or like right now, the internet is running on a bunch of crap software, even though it's running, right? So I don't know if he was talking about companies like, I don't know who he was talking about actually, but maybe he's just talking about, yeah, it could be anything. Talking about the concept of trying to deliver software fast. Now I understand from the business perspective, you want to get it out there. You want to get it out there fast, right? That's almost like the only thing you can do. But if you don't also, like I think there does need to be a balance. Get something out first, but then constantly circle back. You can't just be putting out new features. Constantly circle back and make sure that you pay attention to technical excellence. That's what he's saying. Because as software grows, it's organic. I used to say it like software's alive, but software is organic. It does grow, it does evolve. Like a tree or whatever. You're always adding new features. And if you're adding new features, that means the code is changing. Like I think I said this before. I think it was here. But if you're building, we'll go back to the other scene because there's nothing here. I might come back to this. But if you're building a design, a UI layout, and your design calls for 2 buttons, and then suddenly you double your buttons and you have 4 buttons, maybe that changes the design of it, right? Like you might say, okay, well, or like your original ad copy had like 2 lines or 2 sentences, and now you want to change it to like 2 paragraphs. So like 2 paragraphs of 5 sentences each. You can just throw that in there, but maybe it throws off the entire design. What if you want to add a picture? It probably throws off the entire design, so you got to rework it. And everyone kind of knows you have to rework that entire design. Or if you want to make a redesign to one of the screens, which I've done on apps, and then that, I don't know, that makes that screen look much better than everything else. And so then you decide maybe the whole app needs a redesign. That's obviously the extreme, but I've worked at companies who have done stuff like that. And I don't even think it's extreme anymore. If you built an app 3 years ago and it looks the same today, maybe there's new or better technology or new like design principles, not like coding design principles that people want to use, right? Maybe like the style before was material design. I don't know about design, but like the style before was like colorful and flashy, and now it's like flat and simple, something like that. So design changes, code changes. Now maybe not everything, well, if you have good architecture, hopefully the core of your architecture doesn't need to change. That is kind of the benefit of using MVC or MVVM or whatever, however you want to call it. Just having those separation of concerns. That's the purpose, so that if the UI needs to change, it doesn't have to change the business logic. But if I'm adding new features to some screen, I'm adding new business logic, then the way that I was solving the problem might not work the same. That's just fact. And that's the point of everything I'm saying. As you add more features, things get more complex, and it starts becoming difficult to actually plan. So the more important thing is to be agile and say, okay, well, and there's nothing wrong with like the 2 weeks or the 4 week sprints or anything, but okay, well, I'm working on this feature, but in order to fix this feature, well, I ran into this bug, or in order to fix this feature, we need to re-architect this section that was like whatever. This section wasn't expecting to change. Now we're changing it. So let's make that more flexible. And so in order to get that feature out, we don't want to lose, lose sight of the trees for the forest? See the forest for the trees? I don't know. We don't want to lose sight of the end goal and like just go down a rabbit hole or anything like that. But sometimes in order to get that feature out the best way, maybe not the fastest way, but the best way, is to go back and re-architect some stuff. And to me, that is agile. We also, at my current company, we'll be working on something, and we worked with a guy who, I don't remember what his title was. Business, I don't know. He like made business plans. And we were talking about being agile, and he wrote the BRD, business requirements document, and it was a huge thing. And it was exactly working software over comprehensive documentation. He spent weeks on the documentation, and I think we still have it up, and we don't use it at all. The app is just different. I don't know. Like it didn't work like that. And I asked him one time, I was like, how is this agile? I was trying not to be, I'm never trying to be, like have a bad attitude about anything. But I asked him, I go, this just doesn't seem very agile because we have this big old plan. Again, a roadmap seems different than trying to schedule out what we're going to be working on for the next year. Here's the things we would like to do is different than here's what will be done in the next year. Yeah, so that guy doesn't work at the company anymore. We don't use his plan. We successfully built at least the first iteration of the app. I don't want to say we didn't follow a plan. We had a layout from the pre-existing app, and then we just took it one step at a time. Let's get in-app purchases in. Okay. Let's get supplements in. Okay. And we just took it one step at a time. And then sometimes we'd be working on supplements, and for example, we'd be working on some feature, and whatever, it's taking some time, so we have like a week because there needs to be some back end work, and then the bosses would come and say, hey, can we do this kind of cool thing over here? Yeah, okay, we can do that. So then we would add that thing in. Like that, to me, that seems agile. We're responding to change. We're getting out features as quick as we can. When there's a delay in the feature pipeline, then we respond to that, and we build it like that, right? I think one of the other key things was, I'm gonna keep referring to this because I like it so much. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. I'm not sure exactly what he means by this. There's a couple of different things, but I think teamwork is super important. And so I think when everyone's focused on the same, at least within a team, if everyone's focused on the same piece, like the same core feature, I think that also works much better, because then you collaborate. He says customer collaboration as well, but I think that you collaborate better, and you can help each other out, and everyone's in the same headspace. I think it's dangerous when, like, mobile team, even at this other job I was working at, I was the only mobile developer, but mobile team was working on, like, I was building out the Android and iPhone, I was using Ionic, so that's fine. That was the tool that I was doing. We actually, I guess it still works the same. We had kind of like two teams. We had a team maintaining the old software, and then I was part of the team building the new software. And so, yeah, I guess that was kind of how it was. I'd be working on, so it was me, a front-end guy, and a back-end guy. And back-end guy also helped maintain some of the old stuff. But yeah, I thought that still did work pretty well. We did have our own pieces. Me and the front-end guy would be working on similar stuff because we had a shared library for like API calls, and then the back-end guy was obviously making those endpoints and delivering the correct data that we actually needed. And so day to day, we might not be working on the same pieces. Obviously, I'm working on mobile specific, but I thought that worked really well. And then at one point, we needed some form tool, and front-end guy was still super busy working on, he was front-end and design. Back-end guy probably could have done it, but he didn't know Angular. And so I was ahead on the mobile for where I needed to be. So I stepped off of mobile, and I started working on I guess you could call it like the front end, or like it was the front end. It was like the back end tool, like back office tool, where we could design forms, and it was pretty cool. And so I thought it was pretty cool. I wish I had a demo of that project, but yeah. So like that also feels pretty agile, right? Now maybe you can't always do that. It's hard to find people who are actually like cross-functional like that. The only reason I was able to jump on Angular was because we had switched over to the Ionic framework, which was using Angular and TypeScript, so it worked out. But yeah, it did work out, and that was pretty agile. I thought that whole company did a pretty good job of actually being agile, even though we did sprints and demos and stuff like that. But it was way less strict. It was more about, okay, I want these features done. What are we going to do about these features? So I liked that. Compare that with, like I said, that gaming company, and it just wasn't like that. Oh, there we go. Let's see. Maybe I beat this to death. Yeah, there was. I just talked a lot about this. I'll probably talk about it more. Maybe we'll talk about it on the podcast the next time, because it seems interesting to me. It seems like there's a divide. Oh, well, what's the divide? What's the alternative? I guess it just seems that people want that process. Like I said, like at that gaming company, they want, like, the process itself doesn't hurt. There's nothing wrong with like meeting every 2 weeks and talking about this stuff. Although I think it's probably, and there's nothing wrong with meeting every day and doing the stand-up, except for, in my opinion, also stand-up turns more into a unengaged, especially as the stand-up gets big. I've been in 20 or 25 person stand-up, and people are working on different projects. So people are giving, it just turns into like a daily progress report. Stand-up should be, what is it? It's like 3 things. What did I do yesterday? What am I doing today? Am I blocked? Like, what am I blocked by? And that's, those are good things. Those are good things to know, good things to talk about. But when it starts getting to be, like I said, like a 20 or 30 person team, and the people over there are working on something completely different, then it almost doesn't affect me. I think that's the danger of it. It doesn't affect me what they worked on yesterday or what they're working on today, or even if they're blocked. And so it ends up just being people aren't engaged. People are just doing their status report. There was an article where people said, don't make stand-up a status report. It should be to reconnect with the team. Let's talk about, or like as an example, that other team that I was just working with, where I was mobile, we had a front end, we had a back end. Like, we were in a stand-up, that was a smaller team, but we were in a stand-up with a couple of other people. But the other stuff almost didn't matter. The stuff that the 3 of us were doing that's all the stuff that we actually really cared about. That's all the stuff that we really needed to know. And in fact, since we all sat next to each other, we almost didn't even need a stand-up. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. Even if we don't need it, you can still say, hey, I'm still working on this part of the forms tool. Like, so it's not done yet. Even though maybe it's not done, I think it'll be done in like 2 days or whatever. And I'm not blocked. Or one good thing, again, if you're working together, if you're blocked, and hopefully the person who's blocking you knows that. But it could be really important to say, hey, I just found this bug in the back end, and I'm blocked by that bug. So I think that's good. But as the team gets too big and you're working on different projects or products or however you want to say it, I think at a certain point it becomes less necessary. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have additional meetings, and this could be more important. Maybe not a daily meeting, but maybe a weekly meeting with your department, or however you want to say, like all of the tech teams meet. And that would, certainly the tech lead would want to meet with at least the leads of all of the teams. But maybe it's good to get like that high-level overview. Yeah. So I think that, I guess my biggest problem is there's good ideas for all of this, but people want to, I don't know if there's even a right word for it. There's good ideas for all this, but people want to force it directly into the box. Like systematize it or whatever. Like make everything measurable. And from what I've seen, it just doesn't work that way. Not just from me. I'd love to hear other people, actually. But from the teams I've worked on and the people I've worked with, even when they're good, because sometimes you'll just race and you'll get stuff done, especially when people get excited. They'll race and they'll work hard like on their own, or they'll like do sprints, and like if they're working on a really cool feature, then they might like break through and get that feature done really fast, and just because they're excited about it, something like that. But yeah, I was thinking, I lost track. I lost my train of thought because I was thinking there is also benefit. There's value in having programmers work on stuff that gets them excited. Like programmers like solving problems, and so like if you can point them towards that problem, or you get them working on a feature that they're really excited about, it goes so much faster, like so much faster than just like the monotony of like tickets. Like sometimes you got to fix bugs. Like again, it's not. It's not easy. That's that's it. It's not easy, but even fixing bugs is fine when I fix bugs on the Android app, a lot. I wish I wrote perfect code, but I don't. So, but when I see a bug, because I feel ownership of that, because I wrote it all, when I see a bug and I see people are crashing and I go, oh no, like I need to get this done. I'm not just doing it for the company. I'm doing it for me and for my app. And that's I guess a lot of this is also related to Linchpin, that book Linchpin, where, I mean, again, it is that attitude, but as a company, if you can cultivate that attitude, like you can have programmers who just come in and just do the work, and that's fine. But you're probably not going to get very far with them. They're going to do the work. You might, some people have families and stuff, so I'm not trying to judge on them. They might be really good. I guess I don't even want to say it like that. Somebody could be really good, and they're really good because they come in at 6 a.m. and then leave at 3, and then now they're like, because they got to go and spend time with their family, they're fresh for the rest of the rest of the week. They don't feel burnt out, and they come in and they're like, okay, I did take my break. I sharpened my saw like daily, and now but I'm coming back and I'm excited about fixing this, and that's fine too. If you overwork people, and people aren't sharpening their saw, then they do get burnt out. But people might overwork. The word that I'm looking for isn't overwork, but people might do that on their own, just because they're excited. When I worked at that school, originally a coworker, we moved to Singapore together, and he didn't like teaching. Teaching wasn't for him. He wanted to move to Singapore, but teaching wasn't for him. He just wanted to make games. So he eventually quit. I think within 9 months he quit and was making video games. But we had he just really didn't like the work, but he had one weekend where the boss came and said, hey, we need a tool for this. Like, somebody was making a game for a competition, and they needed content. They needed levels. So they asked my coworker, hey, do you think you can build a level editor for us? And he stayed at work. Jeez. He was there until 4 a.m. over the weekend. He would come. He would just work. He just worked all weekend. And I think he stayed all night Friday, and then came in early Saturday, and then stayed all night Saturday, and then same on Sunday. And then by Monday, he had not only the tool, he had the game because he wanted to demo the levels that he was creating. So he rebuilt the game in the tool. And the boss didn't ask him to do that. But because of that, because he was working on something that he liked, he went that extra mile. And I guess that guy quit. And so the boss, smarter thing the boss could have done would have been to recognize that potential in that guy and cultivated that. Maybe even paid him more instead of having that guy leave. It's like, oh wow, this guy can be really valuable. Instead, he said, okay, thanks for that. Keep doing teaching. Like, keep working on this stuff that's boring. And then that guy moved on. And so, yeah, I mean, management seems difficult too. I'm not saying there's an easy answer for there either. I guess I don't have any easy answers. I'm just kind of thinking out loud right now. I don't think what people are doing is actually agile. Or it's like agile-ish. I think even that one company, eventually they even admitted that they were more waterfall-like. And that's where I think it goes. Everyone wants to say they're agile. I guess that's my ending complaint, and I wish that people would. I don't like saying it's a complaint. My ending observation, and I wish that people would realize this observation. I think a lot of people say they want to be agile because those are the buzzwords. So, and they feel they're agile because they have a scrum master, and they do sprints, and they do daily stand-up, 15-minute daily stand-up. And those sprints are mysteriously always 2 weeks. Is that the best for the team, or is that just because everybody does 2-week sprints? You know, that's something else to think about. But everybody wants to be thought about as agile. But if you actually looked at the processes, or if you actually looked at so they want to be thought of as agile, but if you actually look at how they want things delivered, they want it to be waterfall. And that seems wrong. Anyway, I'll talk to you tomorrow. I came back because I turned off my recording, and then I also just happened to hit this screen again. My screen, and I just thought that looked really cool. So I just wanted to share that. This means nothing, but it just looks pretty cool. Nothing special there. Yeah, that's fun. Anyway, that's all. I'm going to record some stuff for Kojo now. Anyway, I'll talk to you tomorrow.